So, I haven't seen you guys in a while. I've wanted to make an update video for a while because a lot has been going on in my life. I recently got a job as a production intern on a film set. One day I'll make a video about my experiences on that, but today I wanted to talk about I've been watching so many fantastic TV shows, and if you know me, I said this multiple times on my channel, I am not the biggest TV watcher. It took me 2.5 years to watch Breaking Bad. Let that sink in for a second. Like, all 5 seasons had already been out. I started it in like the fall of 2019 and I didn't finish it until like April or May of 2022. I have an issue when it comes to commitment. TV requires a lot of time. These episodes, especially nowadays, they can get to like an hour long, you know, and it's like 10 plus episodes per season, so you have to invest a lot of time and a lot of energy into these shows. For TV shows, it requires a lot more time to let things simmer and to flourish and be fully fleshed out and fully formed, to really get to know the characters and the situations on deeper, more personal levels. And so when I watched Breaking Bad, I had this really painful nasal surgery in like April of 2022, and I just got home from this surgery, and I was just thinking, I was like, while I'm gonna be sick for the next few days, just kind of like recovering, I might as well just finish Breaking Bad. I was on season 5. I was just taken forever to get through the show. Not because I thought the show was bad, I thought it was brilliant. Every single episode when it ended, I was like, this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then the next day I would just forget about it. And I got to that finale, and then I was like, why did I wait so long to watch this? This is so phenomenal and so well executed. So I was like, I might as well just, you know, dive right into Better Call Saul. So that's what I did. In the past year, I have watched a total of, let me check here, 8 shows. For me, that's a ton of time dedicated to multiple different stories. I have watched the entirety of all of these shows. There are 2 miniseries in here that I'm going to include, but they are these like 12 episode miniseries, just 1 season. Anyway, I want to talk about every single show that I've watched in the past year and what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and I'm going to start from the show I liked the least and work my way up to my favorite. But honestly, I love all of these the same, so it's like it doesn't really matter how I rank them. So The Offer was recommended to me by someone on the film set that I was working on that I mentioned before. And I really had a good time with this. I thought it had a really good sense of pace, but it like was willing to really dabble in the areas that I'm most interested in. Because so often with movies about filmmaking, seem to focus on only the business aspect and the paperwork, and that's not always the stuff that I love to watch. I mean, this has plenty of that, a lot of business stuff, but this also shows the creative process as well. It shows it very extensively and very accurately to kind of get that feeling of being there in the moment, in the action, feeling the stress of every single situation, every problem that gets thrown at you. Basically, this show centers on Al Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather, and his, you know, success story, and how he went through all of these just crazy situations to be able to get the film made. There were so many people, Italian Americans, that were deeply offended by the novel The Godfather, written by Mario Puzo. They didn't want the film to get made. There's like all these negotiations going on with like mob bosses. Al Ruddy is talking to like Joe Colombo, and he's like, dude, I just want to make a movie. I don't want to be like dragged into all this crime. It's just so funny to see the absurdity of this story and how it happened. But it's like, it's so inspiring to know that The Godfather ended up, you know, fully forming and becoming the thing that we know it as today. This was a series that truly made me excited about the process. I thought it was very well casted. The guy that plays Francis Ford Coppola, I don't know what his name is, but he is incredible in the show. He is so entertaining to watch. The reason this show is like the first one I'm talking about, it's definitely my least favorite, just because I think out of all of these, this lacks any nuance. It really goes for the whole protagonist antagonists approach. It's a pretty black and white story, and there are times where where it's self-aware about that, and it knows that, and it has lines that like directly acknowledge that, you know, sometimes in storytelling you've got to make things, oversimplify things for the viewer to understand and fully comprehend. But I don't know, I just think a show about the making of one of the most morally complex films ever made, and one of the best shot and directed films ever made, is shot in the most flat, average way possible, and it's told in the most predictable fashion, which is fine. Like, I think it works. Again, I was super entertained all the way through, and it really reminded me of why I'm so fervent about this process. It was a really good time, but yes, it did lack a lot of the subtlety. Stranger Things is obviously one of the most popular shows on TV, and there's not a ton that I can really add to the conversation. Over time, it really does become a little oversaturated, and it becomes a little too much of a good thing. The ensemble gets so big, and the characters are so likable that there's just like too much talent that other people start to get a little more dull over time, but that's just what happens when you add so many charismatic characters into one space. Despite that, I just think it's so well done, and the way they've really brought this entire universe to life is pretty incredible. It's really established its own iconography, and yes, it is banking off of a lot of 80s nostalgia. It still manages to feel like its own thing, and it still manages to feel fresh in its own way. I'll definitely say that season 3 is my least favorite. I think that's where a lot of the biggest issues start to fully form. I really love the way the characters are written. I love the chemistry between all the actors. I cannot stress enough how freaking charismatic every single person in this show is. They're so fun to watch. They always make you smile. It's impossible not to love them. So I adore this cast, and I love these characters. I'll definitely say season 1 is my favorite season by far. The close second would definitely be season 4. I was really shocked how much better season 4 was from season 3, and it does contain my favorite episode of the entire series, which is Dear Billy. I think that's where all the characters get the most to do. Even the characters in the whole California subplot, they're only like exciting scene within the entire season, which is that whole shootout inside the house. That was the only interesting thing that happened to them. Like, that was there, and then we have everything with Max, obviously, and that iconic running up that hill scene. I think it's where the characters just have the most to do in a single episode. So yeah, I think favorite season 1, favorite episode, Dear Billy. Moral Orel, show that was not on my radar at all. The reason I watched this show was because of my cousin, my 15-year-old cousin, recommended it to me. When he like broke it down, like the plot synopsis, the basic plot synopsis, I was like, I feel like I would dig this. It's like a claymation style adult comedy about a kid named Orel who lives in the town called Morrilton, which is an extremely conservative Christian town. All the little shenanigans he gets into because he constantly misinterprets religious teaching, things that the preacher says up at the pulpit, and that's what season 1 mostly consists of. These absurdist situations where he misinterprets a lesson, and then he just goes ahead and he just does something really dumb, and then at the end the dad teaches him a lesson, but the lesson isn't like the right takeaway. It's just this like biased, usually bigoted point of view that he pushes onto his kid, and it's really sad and disturbing, but it's also really funny if you put it in context. But as the show goes on, it gets increasingly more serious, but it slowly gets into the perspectives of the individual characters in Morrilton, and it shows the effects that religion can have on someone, specifically Orel, this little boy who doesn't know any better. He's so naive and so innocent. It starts out as this funny, likable thing. It's mostly played off for comedy, but as the show goes on, it shows how that's actually really destructive to take advantage of a kid's mind like that. Start putting these ideas in their head that are clearly not true, just things that you want to instill in their mind to cover up your own insecurities. It satirizes a lot of religious teachings, but I don't think it's anti-religion. I don't think it's coming from a place that's talking down to religious people and telling them that they're wrong. It just extracts some of the absurdity from a lot of these situations, and it tries to look at the flaws in religious systems. As the show goes on, it gets sadder and sadder, and there are points that are just, it's hard to watch and really fully emotionally involve yourself in, because it takes a lot out of you emotionally. It has so much care for the characters. It's so thoughtful. So it was definitely very ahead of its time in that way. There are definitely some dated aspects. I mean, this show started in like 2005, so you're gonna get a couple of jokes here and there that cross the line a little much. Season 3 is my favorite season by far, because I think that's where it dives into the perspectives of all the different people in this town. Either they use religion as some way to rationalize their effed up ideologies or their horrendous actions, or they use it for good things, and they use it to find hope and make peace with things. I think out of all of these shows, this one probably has some of the most disturbing content. Really got under my skin in a lot of ways, but yeah, it's an incredible show, super underrated. I had never heard of it until my cousin recommended it to me, but apparently it's a really big deal to a lot of people, including me. And as someone who is at a point in his life that I'm trying to navigate my way through my own religious beliefs, this is a show about asking questions and examining these teachings and be like, why does it have to be like this? Have we thought about it in any other way than the way we've been taught to think about it? And it decides to approach these concepts with a new vision. It manages to find the humanity within that, and it's very thought-provoking. And anyone who is having religious doubt, I highly recommend seeing this show, because I don't think it is completely atheistic, you know? Like, I think it has an admiration for religion, or at least the teachings, but it's very much against the institutions. I'd say my favorite season is definitely season 3. My favorite episode, probably the season 2 finale, which is called Nature. Deeply emotional. I love that episode so much. So yeah, highly recommend the show if you haven't seen it. Barry ended this year. We got season 4. I had never seen the show before. I had heard of it for years, but didn't have the itch to finally sit down and watch it until finale came out. And once the finale came out, and I heard so many people just raving about it, saying it's one of the best shows to ever premiere on television, I was like, okay, might as well give this a watch. So I watched entire series, all 4 seasons, in like 2 weeks. Again, I started this after the series finale. So I watched the whole thing, and to kind of see it all together like that was, I think, helpful. It managed to really put me in the minds of the characters, because I didn't really have a ton of breaks to really think about it, and so I was just kind of... Barry is incredible. It's about a hitman named Barry, played by Bill Hader. The show was also written and created by Bill Hader. He directs a lot of the episodes. It's Bill Hader's baby, and you can tell. It does a good job at making you care about Barry as a character, using a lot of surrealist imagery to kind of put you in his mindset and be like, this is what he really wants in his life, but he can't fully achieve that. They really give every character equal screen time. It's also just a really hilarious commentary on the industry in Hollywood and LA, and like the superficiality of the entire scene, especially when it comes down to acting, and how acting can actually be a dangerous tool, because in this case it's a literal murderer, like a psychopath. And so all of the emotion he lets out, you don't know if that's actually real and authentic, or if that's just acting. Sometimes people let their true colors out in the most blatant of ways, and it's really disturbing. The way Bill Hader brings this character to life is just so brilliant. To really see him go this far, and this dramatic, and this just intense, like, it's so intense. You just see the way his face contorts, the anger you see in his eyes. It's like, is he okay? It's such a meta show about acting and performing brought to life by people that have acted and performed for years. I thought season 4 had a lot of good patches, but I do think it lost steam a little bit in the end. NoHo Hank is one of my favorite characters, and I feel like he just didn't grab me nearly as much in that final season. And I think the finale was really good, about how media strips away nuance and identity, and it reduces the complexities of life and specific circumstances just to kind of exploit someone else's image. My favorite season is season 2, and I think my favorite episode is Ronnie Lily, I believe that's what it's called, directed by Bill Hader. It's a hilarious episode, just a great situational piece. I think it's a very digestible show compared to a lot of things on HBO. I did not think I was gonna enjoy this show. When it came to season 1, the first couple episodes, I'm gonna be completely honest, did not grab me. Why am I supposed to sympathize with these people? Shows about the rich often really aggravate me in that way, because it's like, why are these the people that we should care about? You know what I mean? But then I swallowed my pride a little bit, and then I was like, whatever happened to empathy? And once we got to episode 6 of season 1, that's where something really big happens to Kendall. The show is immaculately written. All of the dialogue, everyone's just speaking in riddles like the entire time. The show is about dishonesty. It's about characters that can't speak what they're actually feeling. Everything has to be coded in some kind of business term. Everything is a negotiation. And so that's why everyone in the show just has this very snappy, strange way of talking. But for me, that draws me in even more, because even though I don't exactly know what they're talking about 100% of the time, the performances, the way the camera is moving, and the way the music cues in, everything just can kind of tell what the characters are feeling if you just read into it enough. It's the best acted TV show I think I've ever seen in my life. The way these actors are able to convey emotion, but also put up a facade, and then put up another facade, it's like they're wearing a bunch of different masks, but you can still tell what they're feeling in the center of it all, which is really difficult to do. Sarah Snook blows me away every time she opens her mouth. The way she's able to use her eyes, her crying, it devastates you. The most impressive thing about the show is how much it makes you care about the characters while also makes you just despise the characters. I loathe these people. I hate them so much. I also kind of care about them, and I want to see them succeed, despite all of these qualms that I have with them and their morality. That's what the show does. It puts you in this situation where it's like, these morals don't really matter anymore, and let's just examine this as authentically as we possibly can. And that's what makes the true human moments between the characters, which are very, very few and far between, they hit so much harder. You're craving for that humanity. I honestly think this is one of the greatest contemporary pieces of art that we've received in a long time. When it comes to the music and the aesthetic and just the performances and the relevancy of everything that occurs in it, I just think it's one of the most important and monumental. I will say, like, similar to Succession, it took me a little bit to get into it, but there's just something about the aesthetic and just the visual storytelling that really, really pulled me in, that I couldn't take my eyes off of. You can just see that something is coming. You can see something over the horizon, and just the way that it's able to bring that to life through lighting and shadows and just the framing. This is like the best shot show I have ever seen. I think as a follow-up to Breaking Bad, like, I honestly can't really decide which show I like more. Breaking Bad is a good narrative story, but Better Call Saul is the more meditative piece. It's the one that really puts you in the perspective of the characters more. It's the one that really helps you understand this world that's already been established really well. It takes what's already set up and then it just kind of explores it in a more thoughtful way. My favorite season is definitely season 6, the final season. I think that's where everything really ties together. And I think my favorite episode, it would be Chicanery, Plan and Execution, or Point and Shoot. Any one of those three. I can't really pick. Really wonderful show. One of my all-time favorites for sure. Acting, writing, cinematography especially. Best looking show I've ever seen. Between Bojack Horseman, Better Call Saul, and Breaking Bad, those are like my 3 favorite shows, and I don't know which one is my favorite, but today, I'm gonna say it. It's Bojack Horseman. I watched the whole thing in a week. I never do that. I am not the type of guy to sit down and watch something all the way through in that short amount of time. I am not a binger. I've never been. And so that was a huge deal for me. It was so much to take emotionally. My favorite character in the whole show is Diane. And I love Diane so much because I relate to her. And it's just like the inconsistencies of her beliefs and how she's like, my morals are very clear. As the show moves on, you see things come in her way where she has to question that, and she has to be like, do I actually believe that? And she's making exceptions for herself, and does that make her a bad person? I don't know. Bojack Horseman, it balances its entertainment value because it's super funny, and it's just filled to the brim with jokes in the background, in the foreground, every line of dialogue. Really impressed that something like this was able to get made. At some point in time, I will make a video on Bojack Horseman and why it's my favorite show. It's not just because it's some edgy adult comedy. It's really not. It's such a thoughtful show, and it manages to tap into human emotion in a way that I can never fully articulate. This did that for me. It was really cathartic. I think my favorite season 2 and season 5 are pretty great. My favorite episode is definitely the second to last episode of season 6, which is the view from halfway down. I think that's one of the best pieces of art ever conceived. It hits me every single time. It speaks to me on so many deep personal levels that I could never fully explain. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really worth your time. The final thing I want to talk about is a miniseries on Hulu called Normal People. It came out in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. This thing destroyed me. I think it's one of the most beautiful love stories ever told. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. The story that it tells it's between these two people, these just two very delicately developed characters, played by Paul Mescal and Daisy Edgar Jones. Two of the most exciting stars working today, by the way. I mean, they are some of the most talented people I think I've seen in front of the camera in years, and I'm so excited to see what they're going to do next in their careers because they're really, really good. But their performances just blew me away, especially Paul Mescal, who just delivers this performance that it was like he brought me to life, but like a better version of me, because I still kind of suck, but the introverted nature of the character really spoke to me. Was really impressed by that. It's a deeply emotional show, very intimate show. The intimacy, the connection these two characters have, it's almost spiritual. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it, but you just feel the love, this burning, passionate, intense love between these two people, and it's so well performed. The writing is gorgeous. It's just a really beautiful and intimate show. So, Normal People. It's on Hulu. I highly recommend checking it out. It kind of changed my life. So yeah, that was my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Just tell me what shows you've been watching. I just wanted to give you a quick little update, talk about some of the shows I've been watching. I talked way longer than I thought I was going to, but yeah. I love you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at some point. This is Ethan Butler, and I'm out.